Hello everybody, SlimKirby here, and welcome to another episode of the Animal Crossing playthrough. I am playing through an entire year's worth of Animal Crossing in this series, and this Let's Play is basically my journey through accomplishing such a feat. This Let's Play will feature a live stream playthrough where I will be covering every single day's worth of unedited content and a much shorter abridged series of videos, the videos you're watching right now, which will only cover the basics and all the important happenings in between the repetition and grinding that some people may be less inclined to sit through. Feel free to digest this content in whatever way you see fit, whether you want to stick with these shorter videos, or if you'd rather see everything, jump on over to the stream playlist linked in the video description below. Anyway, let's continue from where we left off. So, let's get started with Friday, July 13th. This day started off with a couple of letters in my mailbox. I got a letter from home from my dear old mother. You'll randomly get messages from home from time to time, and sometimes you may even get gifts as well. Unfortunately though, your parents will never make any physical appearances in the game. You'll just get these wholesome letters instead. In this letter, my mom talked about how my dad was apparently annoyed with having curry for dinner every night, and she blamed his annoyance on the fact that he is a man. Look, Mom, I know men aren't perfect, but that's not just a man thing. Everyone needs a little bit of variety from time to time. I also got mail from the HRA, formally introducing me to the process of getting graded by them, and then 3 letters from the Faraway Museum, sending me back some of the fossils I sent, now properly identified. Overall, there are 25 fossils in the game, and 20 of them will be parts of prehistoric creatures from the past, while the remaining 5 are just one-offs. The fossils I received were a Triceratops torso, a Triceratops skull, and a dinosaur track, the latter of which is one of the 5 one-offs. Now that these are identified, I can actually give them over to Blathers at the museum, and much like the bugs, he'll put the fossils in the back room so you can look at them whenever you visit. This will officially start the great fossil collecting process, where in the process of doing my routine, I'll try to find as many fossils as I can, send them to the museum, and hopefully get all 25 in the process. The fossils you get are completely random, and although I'm not sure when each fossil is officially determined, I want to say it's just assigned randomly each day when the letters are sent out. Since the process is random though, you will definitely get duplicates the more days you do this. However, while getting duplicates is a bit annoying, much like bugs and fish, you can actually sell the fossils you've already donated to earn quite a bit of extra money, so they can be a bit of a decent moneymaker this early on. And while we're still in the area, I take this time to check out my new house upgrade as well. The house isn't too much bigger, we really just get an extra column of space on both the left and right sides, as well as an extra row in the back, but it's definitely more livable than what we had before. We head over to Tom Nook's and he lets us know that for this new upgrade, we will have to pay it off, much like we did before, but this time we need to pay over 100,000 bells. That is quite the price we have here, but we've done a good job so far in earning money, and the more we live here in Popstar, we'll certainly get more bell-making opportunities as well. Speaking of which, Nook had 2 additional tools for sale today, and one of those tools will definitely lead us to making a lot of money in the near future, and that tool is the fishing rod. Much like the bug catching net, the fishing rod will allow us to catch fish that are swimming in different bodies of water around Popstar. You see a silhouette of a fish swimming around the water, you can cast your line and try to catch it. You have to aim your cast in front of the fish though, so it notices your hook, and if it's daring, it will start to prod and nibble on the end of it. If you see a splash of water, that means that it's hooked itself on your line, and you can press the A button to reel it in. This is honestly a bit harder than it probably sounds. You really have to press the A button as soon as possible here, because if you delay too long, it will get away. I find getting fish in this game is harder than any other Animal Crossing game, because the timing is just that tight. However, with a bit of practice on your reaction time, catching fish can honestly be quite therapeutic and fun in this game, and it can be quite rewarding if you know what type of fish to look for, because they can actually be sold at Nook's shop for a good profit. In fact, I'd almost say fishing is probably one of the best ways to make money in this game. Anyway, as you might expect with my new fishing rod, I decided to do a bit of fishing on this day. Much like bugs, there are 40 fish to collect, and also like bugs, my very first catch was an underwhelming one, as I went for the incredibly common sea bass. You can only find these fish in the sea, basically any acre that has a beach, and although they do look pretty big, the amount of money you get for them is relatively small. Which I should probably mention that when it comes to fish, there are a couple of factors that determine which kind of fish you get. For one, location and time is important, as some fish only show up in the river, some only show up in the sea, some only show up during certain times of the day, and probably most significant, some only show up during certain times of the year. As a result, you'll need to advance quite a bit of time in order to get every fish in the game. We can actually get a good number of them right now in the month of July and the other summer months, but only around 70% of them. The second thing you have to keep in mind is the shadow size of the fish. As you've probably noticed, some of the shadows are bigger and smaller than the others. Basically, there are 6 different shadow sizes: tiny, small, medium, large, very large, and huge. By knowing your shadow size, you can actually narrow it down to what fish you could potentially get very easily. And if you are only looking for one type of fish of a specific shadow size, you can either ignore or scare off any others as a result, and focus on one size at a time. I found this knowledge very helpful in trying to locate specific fish in this playthrough, so pay attention to what fish you get at certain sizes, and it could save you a lot of time when you are filling out your fish log. There are also other minute differences between fish in terms of how they move and how fast they can let go of the line, but I didn't pay too much attention to these details personally. As for other fish catches, another fish I found in the sea was the red snapper, and the red snapper is an interesting case because it does share the same shadow size as the incredibly common sea bass and another fish we'll see later on. Unlike the sea bass though, this fish is a lot more expensive, and you can sell one for 3,000 bells, so it's always welcome to see these guys when they appear. I also did some fishing in the river as well, and ended up with a small bass, which has a small shadow size, a bass, which has a medium shadow size, and a carp, which has a large shadow size. All 3 of these fish can be found all day, all year round, and are located only in the town rivers. They're also pretty common, so you'll likely find them at some point if you do a lot of fishing. I also managed to find a catfish, which has a large shadow size, but can only be found in the river during the months of May through October, and only during the hours of 4 p.m. until 9 a.m. Despite the time requirements, I wouldn't say it's too hard to find though, and it's only worth 200 bells as a result. The last fish I found ended up being the sweetfish, which is actually a pretty significant catch for me, because in the coming weeks as I was filling up my fish log, it was actually a decent moneymaker. The sweetfish is only a small shadow size, and it can be found all day in the river, but only during the months of July, August, and September. This fish is not the most expensive fish by any means, with only 1,300 bells, but I found it to be more common than a lot of the other fish of this size, so they can be pretty decent at making money while fish hunting for some of the more rare finds. With all these catches, I went to the museum and got them donated, keeping any duplicates for myself and Tom Nook's shop. Much like fossils and bugs, every new acquisition will first go to the museum. That's just my style. I suppose I should also mention the other catch I made today as well, as I also managed to pick up another bug too, and this bug is the very pesky mosquito. Mosquitoes are pretty annoying, much like they are in the real world, as if they make contact with your character, you will get bitten, and that will cause your character to react with a really annoying text box. Getting bitten doesn't really affect anything, as you won't see any visual changes to your character and it won't impact your gameplay at all, but it can be really irritating whenever it happens. The worst part is whenever you're fishing though, as getting bit while having a fish lured to your line will automatically bring your cast back in, scaring the fish as a result. Anyway, as annoying as this little bug is, it does count as part of the list, so we had to catch and donate it as well. Now that we're done with the museum and collectibles for today, I suppose we should go over the other tool we got at Tom Nook's, the axe. The axe is a very useful tool as it'll allow you to chop down trees, and since we are in a brand new town, likely filled with trees that we had no control over where they were placed, we can use the axe to, in a sense, clear a path for ourselves. Now, you don't want to get too chop happy with the axe, as trees are important for making your town look nice and appeasing the fountain deity, but also because your axe does not have unlimited uses. After a certain number of uses, your axe will break, and the only way to repair it is by pretty much getting a new one. Thankfully, the golden axe, whenever we do get it, will not have this durability issue, but we'll likely need to use regular axes a lot to even get to that point. So get used to axes not only breaking, but also getting new ones whenever they appear in shops. My philosophy this early on is just using axes on trees that are quite literally growing on squares adjacent to each other, and if any happen to be in the way of a straightforward path from one destination to the next one. Also, look out for bees when you are chopping down trees as well, since striking a tree with an axe is pretty much the same as shaking it, and bees will still go after you if it happens. As far as neighbor interactions for the day are concerned, well, it's probably worth mentioning that we did have a new neighbor move in today, so I obviously spent a bit of time with her. Say hello to Penny the Mouse. Overall, Penny seems to be alright. She's no Lily or Cherry, but I'm definitely getting some good vibes from her. I even wrote her a letter to officially welcome her to town. She did create a rather interesting situation, though, because when I asked her if she had any favors to do, she actually asked if she could have a peach, a fruit that is not native to the town of Popstar. I suppose I should go over this now, since I haven't yet, but there are 5 specific fruit types you can have in this game, and when your town is created, one of those 5 fruit will be chosen as your specific town fruit. There are apples, pears, peaches, cherries, and oranges. Popstar's native fruit ended up being pears, which means if I want to grow the other 4, I have to randomly receive one in the game, or visit another town to get one, and then plant it in hopes that a fruit tree will fully grow and spawn more in the process. So because of this, I had no way to fulfill Penny's peach request. Until I randomly talked to Ricky, and he so graciously gave me a peach in return. Wow, Ricky, it's only been 3 days, and you are seriously becoming a champ and one of my best friends here. Anyway, when I got this peach, I still had a bit of a dilemma here, because while I could give this fruit to Penny, I would also be wasting a chance at growing my own peach trees in return. So I decided to ignore Penny's request for now, and tried to plant the tree instead. Now we pray and hope that the peach tree grows, because if it doesn't, well, we'll be screwed on both fronts. On the subject of growing trees, I was happy to find out that my golden shovel tree did start growing, but we still have a few days to go before we know if it worked completely. As far as other moments, I also had a funny interaction with Lily today as well. You see, at one point she asked me to catch a fish for her, and since I was fishing on this day anyway, I did end up giving her one of my duplicate catches, and she was really happy about this, so she gave me a leaning stone as a reward. After talking to her again right after this, she looked into my inventory and saw another fish she wanted, the very same fish I just gave her, and asked for that one too. Lily, I just gave you a fish. What's your endgame here? Whatever, since I do really like Lily, I decided to let her have that one as well. After all, I did already donate it anyway. She gave me some clothes as a bonus, so I guess I didn't go empty-handed here. I also got a response from Cherry after the letter I sent her the previous day, and wow, she signed it forever yours? Dang, that's a pretty deep letter sign off there, Cherry. You want to be mine? Dang, there might be a deeper bond developing here, more than I initially thought. Let the Slim and Cherry shipping begin, I guess. But yeah, that's all I decided to do for this day, so I went back to my house to retire and get ready for the next one. Saturday, July 14th rolls around, and we have a day of quite a number of firsts for us, particularly with a couple of special visitors that we have on this day, but we'll talk about them a bit later as there are a number of other things I want to get through first. So before we get too deep into any of these things, let's cover all the new fossils and creatures we collected today. Starting with the fossils, we managed to get a dinosaur egg and an Apatosaurus torso. The former, of course, being one of the 5 one-offs, and the latter being our first part of a new dinosaur. We also got another Triceratops torso, but since we already donated one, this was considered a duplicate, and we'll be selling it for bells instead. Moving on to the critter collection, I actually managed to get way more bugs today compared to fish, but I think a large part of that was the fact that I started this day in the evening, since one of our special visitors only comes around at 8 p.m. And since I hadn't come on at this time frame yet, this opened the floodgates for a large number of beetles to be found. I found a dynastid beetle, a flat stag beetle, a mountain beetle, and a saw stag beetle. All of these bugs can be found on trees in the nighttime from 7 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next morning, and of course they can only be found during the summer months of July and August. They're not really too hard to capture either, and they all make a decent number of bells as well, so if you get good at capturing them, they can be worth your while. Not as profitable as they are in future games, but still pretty damn good. Also, while I was looking for the daily money rock, I managed to pop a pill bug out of the rock and added that to my collection as well. These bugs can be kind of rare and hard to find, so keep hitting rocks regularly if you're looking for them. Also, if a neighbor is nearby and you see them looking at a rock strangely, chances are a pill bug is inside. Pill bugs, despite their rarity, are not worth very much though, so don't count on them for profit. One really good moneymaker though is the fish I managed to capture on this day, and this capture really caught me off guard because I was not expecting to get it this early. But I managed to actually capture the very rare Arapema. God, that's a huge fish. I don't know if I'll catch this. I have to be like really on my game. Arapema, baby! Now, the Arapema is actually incredibly easy to locate in the sense that it's the only fish that has a huge shadow size. So if you see a giant fish shadow in the river, chances are pretty likely that's the Arapema. It doesn't spawn very often though, and as you might expect, it does not stay on the line for very long. But catch one of these bad boys and you will have a fish that you can sell for 10,000 bells in your possession. Shame we had to donate it first though. Anyway, you can only find these in the river from the hours of 4 p.m. until 9 a.m., and only during the months of July through September. But they're a very nice surprise whenever you end up locating one, not to mention catching one. It wasn't all good news today though, as during my walk around town, I did notice that my peach tree that I started growing the previous day didn't take, which means not only do I not have a peach to give Penny anymore, but I'm gonna have to wait around for another one. In retrospect, I probably should have waited until I had another axe. That way I could chop down one of my other trees and plant it there instead of a random spot. Although it's not a 100% guarantee, in most cases that should work. Oh well, lesson learned, I guess. Anyway, before we get to our special visitors, we actually have two other characters to talk about. First and foremost, we did get another new neighbor today in the form of Ava the chicken, and she actually lives just south of where I live. I don't have too much to say about her right now, but it's very interesting to see her progression and how she'll get along moving forward. In addition to Ava, we did actually have a camper in our village as well. Campers are just villagers who come randomly to visit your town sometimes during the summer, and you can pop into their tent and say hello and potentially even play a game with them as well. Unlike other Animal Crossing games though, these campers won't offer themselves to move to your town. They'll just visit. We got visited by Boots the alligator, and we even played a game with him as well, but unfortunately we didn't get rewarded for it. Also, be careful when you play these games because you have a chance to not only lose a decent amount of your money, but also special items that might be in your inventory. Make sure anything you want to keep is promptly removed or at least dropped outside before initiating these games. Moving on to the special visitors, first we have Sahara the camel. She is a salesperson of very exotic wares, in this case, rare carpets. She will offer you one of her very special carpets for not only a price, but also a trade-in of another carpet you have in your possession. Her carpets cannot be found in stores, nor can they be bought from catalogs, so they are very, very, very rare. However, one thing that is important to note about Sahara is that she'll tell you what carpet she's going to trade you, and if it's a carpet you don't want, you can actually refuse the trade and see if she offers something else, allowing you to pretty much get anything she has in her inventory. You just have to wait for it to appear. Not only that, but you can also get multiple items from her as well. The only stipulation is that price will get more expensive the more you try and trade with her. Sahara is definitely the easiest special visitor to take advantage of here, just because you have the option to rotate through her entire collection and spend what's honestly a fairly low price alongside just having a spare carpet with you as well. And assuming Nook's store is open, you can easily get one from there. Also, remember that if you're having any trouble finding Sahara in your town, you can always use Officer Copper to tell you what acre she's in. The second visitor we have today is none other than the canine musician known as KK Slider. KK Slider, also known as Totokike, will appear in your town at the train station every Saturday night at 8 p.m. until midnight, and if you talk to him, he will play one of his songs for you. This dog is actually a bit of a reference to a very popular musician who has had his hands in a number of Nintendo games, Kasumi Totaka. In fact, it's the very same Totaka known for the famous Totaka song Easter egg that you've probably heard about in a number of other games and playthroughs I've done. Which, yeah, if it wasn't obvious, we will be hearing that song at some point in this playthrough as well. Anyway, you can have this rockin' dog play a random song for you, or request one of his hits if you happen to know the name of his songs. Just make sure you spell the name of his songs properly, including with proper punctuation, otherwise it won't work. The performance is technically where the game's credits will play too, so if you're wondering when exactly this game ends, well, I guess you could say when you reach Saturday? But don't fret, we'll have plenty of more Saturdays to come in this playthrough. This is only the 4th day after all, and like I said before, we still have 362 more to go. Anyway, after the performance, KK will give you a recorded copy of the song he played you that you can put in your house's CD player, which will play that song in your house from now on. You can also look at his songs as collectibles for the game too, but I will not be counting them as a completion goal for this playthrough, just because there are more songs than there are weeks in the year. However, if I find a way to get additional songs, I will try to go for them, and I will of course try to visit them every week on Saturday as well. The song we got this week was KK Kasba. Anyway, those are all the major things I did on this day. I did also write Ricky a letter because he was complaining about the weather being too hot, and I thought, well, maybe he could use a fan. So, I sent him one alongside my letter. We'll have to see how he reacts to this, but yeah, let's move on to the next day. Sunday, July 15th is here, and it's our very first Sunday in Popstar. Sunday is actually pretty significant because, much like Saturday, we do have another regular weekly guest, and this guest will be very important, especially if you like gambling games. But we'll get into that here shortly. The first thing I wanted to mention, though, is that we ended up getting a letter from Tom Nook saying that he was closing his shop for the day, because it was getting a remodel and an upgrade. I'll save the discussion on this new upgrade for tomorrow, but because the store is closed, we'll be unable to buy or sell anything today, unfortunately. It's inconvenient for sure, but I'm sure the store upgrade will be more than worth it in the end. Anyway, these upgrades and remodels will happen after spending and selling a certain amount of bells at the shop, and since I've spent quite a bit of time at the shop these last couple of days, it's really no surprise we got this upgrade as quickly as we did. Hey, we're just helping out the economy, right? Also, I do want to very quickly give a huge shout out to my main man Ricky again for giving us another fruit hookup, and another chance to grow peaches. As we discovered yesterday, our first attempt failed in glorious fashion, but this time I'm going to be a bit more cautious with my planting spot and pick a place that's away from all potential impediments. Let's pray that this will work a lot better this time. Moving on, let's go ahead and talk about our special Sunday visitor, Joan. Joan is a seller of turnips, and she'll be in town every Sunday morning to sell you those turnips. You can buy as many as you want for whatever price she gives you, and, well, you have them. Now, you can't plant turnips, and eating them is not really a smart idea either, but turnips can actually be sold at Tom Nook's shop for a random price every single day. This price will fluctuate like mad, and a lot of people compare this process to playing the stock market, and that's honestly pretty accurate. It's an absolute gamble with purchasing turnips because sometimes you'll get a price that's only a few bells higher than what you purchased them for, and other times they might be much lower. And the worst part is, if you don't sell your turnips before the following Sunday, they will spoil and be worth absolutely nothing. So you are on a bit of a time limit here. Now, even if they are quite the gamble, sometimes the price will spike upwards, and it will spike to an incredibly extreme high. So there is always a chance to have a really nice payday if you use this method. However, as mentioned, it's no guarantee. I think the point of this process is to encourage you and your friends to check your prices daily and visit each other's towns if you end up having a price that's worth the investment. This process is extremely beneficial in the more recent Animal Crossing games, when you have the easy access of Discord or other online communities that are dedicated to keeping you up to date on store prices. Admittedly, it's a bit harder to capitalize on that here. Anyway, for this first attempt, I bought 310 turnips, priced at 100 bells per turnip, meaning I spent about 31,000 bells on this transaction. In the future, I probably wouldn't buy this high, but still, this is supposed to be a learning experience, so I figured why not. Also, not that it mattered in this case since he was remodeling anyway, but you can't sell turnips on Sundays. Tom Nook makes a special exception to not accept them on this day, just in Joan's benefit. And the reason I bought 310 instead of 300, well, I had a reason for that as well, but I'll explain that later. Anyway, after I was done with Joan, I spent the rest of the day fishing and bug catching, and my god, did I have a really productive day in this department. First and foremost, as far as fossils are concerned, I had a pretty heavy duplicate day, but I did manage to score an Apato tail, so it wasn't a total loss and was my second piece of this dinosaur. Really wish I wasn't getting so many duplicates this early on, though. Next I'll go over bugs, because while I do have less fish to cover, there is a pretty significant discovery I made in regards to that, and I'd rather cover that last. Onto the bugs, I managed to collect 8 today, so pretty much 1/5 of the entire collection. Most of my catches were pretty common ones though. I picked up a yellow butterfly, a darner dragonfly, a common butterfly, a common dragonfly, and a tiger butterfly. I don't have much to say about these because, as I said, they are pretty common during the summer months, appearing from 8 AM in the morning until about 4 or 5 PM on days where it's not raining. The dragonflies are a little more strict with the summer months though, since the butterflies can at least be found during some of the spring and fall months as well. I also managed to pick up both a ladybug and a spotted ladybug, which can be found directly on flowers, also during these same time frames, and also when it's not raining. Although, these two will mysteriously vanish from August to September and come back briefly in October, so there is a bit of a time crunch with them. The last bug I captured was a banded dragonfly, and these guys are a bit trickier to catch compared to their other counterparts. These guys will not be flying around casually, but rather they will be zooming past the screen in a direct line, and you almost need to get lucky with where you are on screen when they spawn. The best thing you can do is really just watch the screen carefully, and if you happen to see one, quickly press pause so you can switch to your net, and or mentally prepare yourself for the movements you need to make, and then unpause and make your move in the pull the band-aid off like fashion. Sometimes you'll get lucky and nab it, but other times you may miss it or end up chasing it, and usually when that happens, you've pretty much missed your shot. Which is unfortunate because these guys are probably one of the trickier bugs to catch, but they are definitely worth the capture if you can make it work, as they are tied for the second most expensive bug in the game at 4,500 bells. Moving on to the fish, I once again had a lot of common catches, but there is one fish I got that was actually pretty worthwhile. Before I get to that, I managed to pick up a crucian carp, a freshwater goby, a barbel steed, and a bluegill. The first two fish were small shadow sizes that can be found all year round and throughout the entire day as well, and the barbel steed is the same, just with a large shadow size instead. The bluegill is a small shadow size, just like the first two, but it can only be caught during the hours of 9 AM until 4 PM. The last fish I got was a bit more rare and significant, as I picked up a giant snakehead. This fish is very particular because, while it does appear in the same pool as riverfish, this fish can only be found in the town lake, which is a part of the river, but only on one specific screen. It's the big body of water that has lily pads around it. Some of the town holidays and events will happen on this screen as well, which makes it even more significant and important to locate. Anyway, this fish is a very large shadow size, so bigger than the sea bass and barbel steed, but not quite as big as the Arapema. It also only appears from 9 AM and 4 PM. This fish is the most expensive catch of the day, being worth a whopping 6,500 bells, so it's definitely worth catching it if you ever see this size swimming around the lake, as it's the 6th most expensive fish in the game, although technically 3rd since there are a bunch of ties in the top 2. Now, let's get to a bit of bad news, shall we? It was during this day that I actually made kind of a painful discovery. As I was going over my fish checklist, I made note of the fact that I still needed to catch a frog and a crawfish to add to my collection. These fish, although they are technically not really fish, but classified as that in this game for some reason, can only be found in town holding ponds, which are basically just small bodies of water that don't connect to a river or the sea and are contained within only 1 acre. I unfortunately got very unlucky here, as Popstar was actually created with a grand total of 0 holding ponds. This can actually happen sometimes, but apparently it's really, really rare, so I got incredibly screwed over as a result. Because of this, I will be unable to get a frog or crawfish in my own town, and I'll have to visit another town to get those 2 added to my collection. Now, I had considered making a second town anyway, just to potentially show the visiting process off to you guys, so I'll just knock out those 2 fish in that manner later on. Still though, this was a very inconvenient happening for me, and if I realized it sooner, it could have actually encouraged me to start over, but I was too invested in the progress I made so far, so I didn't bother with those thoughts. But yeah, that's about all that happened on this day. I did also find out that we would be getting visited by Katrina, the traveling fortune teller, on the 17th, so that was something else to mark down on the calendar. We also got a notice on the bulletin board that the morning aerobics would be starting soon. Basically a 5-week event that'll be happening from the last week of July through all of August. I also started getting my suspicions that my golden shovel tree was no longer growing, but I decided to wait another day just to make sure. Anyway, with everything taken care of, I signed out for the day and moved on to the next one. Well folks, I think that's going to be it for another Animal Crossing video. Just a reminder, if you'd like to watch the full segments, raw and unedited, there is a link in the video description where you can watch the full streams of this series. Just remember that I am much further ahead of where I am now with these smaller and faster episodes, so check the video descriptions carefully on what dates are covered in each stream session, in case you don't want to be spoiled on certain happenings and events. Also, if you'd like to catch one of these sessions live and the discrepancy of time doesn't bother you, I'll post a link to my schedule so you know when I generally stream these sessions. As far as the upload schedule for these episodes in particular, I don't have a set time for them, and they'll mainly be ready whenever I get time to make them. I am a busy man after all, and this series is going to take a lot of work, so please understand and be patient with me on that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you fine people next time. Later, folks.